Hello, welcome back to my channel and to my Fighting Fantasy Gamebook Retrospective. And today we've reached Book 20, Sword of the Samurai. Hi! Now, as you'd expect, this is set, well, it's not set in Japan actually. It's set in a part of Titan, it's set in a part of a Lancia called Hashiman, which is basically Japan. One of the things that slightly irritates me about this book is, why don't they just set it in Japan? The whole book is based on Japanese mythology and Japanese history, and it's very well researched actually. They've really gone to town getting all the details right. So why not just set it in mythical Japan? But we have to go back to Titan and the world of Lancia. But anyway, so what happens is, you're in this kind of Japanese-style province of Alancia, and the lead shogun says, look, we've lost this sword called Singing Death, and this is a kind of symbol that will bring peace to our land. Without it, will fall apart. And it's currently held by the Master of Shadows, who's in this pit up in the mountains. He's called Ikiru, which interestingly in Japanese means living. It's the title of a famous Akira Kurosawa film. It's just one of the many little touches that makes this book quite interesting. I mean, I love Japanese culture. I love Japanese cinema. Those people who've watched this channel for a long time will know this. I love everything Japanese. So I'm well disposed to this book right from the very beginning. Now, this book is quite good fun, actually. One of the elements is you're a samurai, so what's important to you is honour. And you build up points of honour throughout the game, and that becomes important later on. And you can also choose from one of 4 skills that samurai have, and this will help you differently in the adventure. You can be an archer, and you have a lot of amusing named arrows. You can get some willow leaf arrows, bowl rakers, armour piercers, and humming bulbs. I like that very much, and there's lots of amusing moments when you can fire those arrows in the game. Or you can be a fast draw artist, not a fast draw pistol, but a fast draw sword. Or, this is one of my favourites, heroic leaping. You can just suddenly leap up into the air, miles in the air, and then land amongst your opponents. It really helps out in a lot of places. Or finally, the skill of fighting with 2 swords, the wakizashi, the short sword, and the katana, the long sword. And these different skills will help you differently throughout the game. So it's a great setup, I really like it. It took me a while to get into this game, partly because of the Japanese setting, and the way that mixes with the Lancia doesn't quite work for me. It took me a while to adjust. And the other thing is that the way that the book is written, you have 2 safe paths, it seems to me. I don't know if I've got this right, but right at the beginning you can go in one direction or the other direction. And then you come to the end from completely different routes. And that means you pick up completely different items that you'll need, which will change the way you play the end game. I think that's right. Having said that, playing the game, I think one route is definitely better than the other, because it seems to me that at one point you've got to meet Tatsu the dragon. Tatsu the dragon, who sets you riddles in the forest. And I tell you now, right, I am crap at riddles. I never get them right. And it was quite amusing when I was doing this game. The first riddle it sets you, I had not a clue what it was. But I came up with an answer. I added up the numbers, went to that paragraph, and in fact, I got the answer to the second riddle. So I got the amulet that I needed anyway, just by completely cheating. Whatever. So, but without meeting Tatsu and his help later on, I don't know how you can really complete the adventure. I didn't mention that the writers are Mark Smith and Jamie Thompson, who of course were the writers of Talisman of Death, which you'll remember I wasn't very keen on. Many of you liked the world building in that book. I prefer the world building in this book. I like this Japanese world that they've put together. So anyway, you go through the adventure, there's lots of wonderful encounters. Almost every encounter you have in this book is really good fun. So you can storm a shogun's castle and depose him. There's one bit where you come to this village, and then when darkness falls, you hear this sort of chattering, and then you look and all the villagers are turned into corpses, and then their heads start coming off their bodies and flying around and trying to eat you. Rakubakuri it's called, which is an actual Japanese demon. Another Japanese mythical creature is the kappa. These are these kind of sort of troglodyte, almost turtle-like beings that come up out of the water. And their weakness is that they've got a little basin of water in their skulls, and if the water spills, they lose all their power. So there's loads of great encounters that you have. Another one is where you go through this marsh and you come across this red pagoda standing serene and silent, and you go inside and all there is a mirror, and you go through the mirror into this beautiful ornamental garden where there's a statue that comes to life of a demon holding a priestess by a dog collar chain. I know, right? I know. But, there's every single encounter in the book is fun and exciting and has a basis in Japanese mythology. But eventually you get to the mountain where Ikiru's domain is going to be, and you reach the hub. I love the hub. So the hub is suddenly you find yourself standing in space, and around you are 8 doors standing there, with a galaxy behind them. And behind each door is a creature, a mythical creature, who you want to try and recruit to help you in the final battle against Ikiru. I love this bit, right? It reminds me, I don't know if any of you are Stuart Lee fans. Stuart Lee taking the piss out of Harry Potter, Harry Potter and the mitten of wool, Harry Potter and the stick of nothing, And so you can go to the pinnacle of ultimate height. You can go to the mountain of ineffable holiness, the endless sands of Akon, or my personal favourite, the swamps of primordial Maya. Fantastic. I really love that. Stuart Lee would have a field day with that. So behind one of them, there's a griffin, or a hippogriff, I think it is. Behind one of them is a dragon. And if you've got certain items that you've picked up on the way, you can recruit them into your cause. One of my favourites is you go into this wood, this enchanted wood, and there's this woman there, and she's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And then you give her this thing, she goes, oh yeah, I remember now, I'm an enchantress. Okay, I'll come and help you. She's my favourite, I like that one. And also I like the Eternal Tower, where there's these kind of Crusader knights on top of this tower in eternity. And if you give them a fan, like a little sort of, fan type thing, they'll say, yeah, mate, we'll come and help you out. Brilliant. And then, so you get an army of people behind you, right? By the way, the Kirin is a bit useless until the end, isn't he? He's absolutely useless. Anyway, so you get these armada of creatures behind you, and then everything dissolves away, and you're in this arena, this kind of empty amphitheatre with these monsters. It reminded me a lot, this bit of, if you're a Doctor Who fan, the end of The Greatest Show in the Galaxy with Sylvester McCoy. It's that kind of arena, and you play out this sort of battle where you need a particular creature for each particular opponent you're facing, and then once you've beaten them, you face Ikiru, or living in his underground lair. All in all, I thought this adventure was terrific. Much better than Talisman of Death, in my opinion. I thought this was great. It was so full of incident. I loved the Japanese setting. I loved the different rules. Every encounter was fun. It did take me a while to get into. It takes a bit of patience. But once you've got the trick of the book, it's great, great fun. I really enjoyed it. The cover is by Peter Andrew Jones, who did Warlock of Firetop Mountain and Starship Traveller. And what a cover that is! My God, this undead samurai, it's sort of Japanese Gothic, with a river of blood underneath the bridge full of skeletons of the dead. Oh my God. And the interior illustrations done by Alan Langford, which are superb. He picks up on that image and does his own version, which is equally good and equally as atmospheric. Alan Langford's interior illustrations are excellent. He gets the Japanese feel really well. Alan Langford, of course, did the illustrations for Island of the Lizard King, and I think they're even better here. Really good, some really good monsters. It really gets the Japanese feel very well. Excellent, really atmospheric illustrations. I think this book is A1. I really enjoyed rediscovering it. That's 4 great books in a row: Appointment with Fear, Rebel Planet, Demons of the Deep, and this one. Great. Now, in the last part of this video, I thought I'd take stock. We've done 20 books in the series now. So I thought I'd just do a mini ranking. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the 20 books into 4 groups of 5, right? So I'm going to do my top 5, next 5, and then bottom 5. So here we go then. So my top 5 books in the range so far. And those of you who've seen my video that I did a couple of years ago, my top 10 fighting fantasy game books, you'll see that I've changed my mind quite a lot. Playing these games again after all this time has really made me see things differently. So my top 5 are the 2 great Steve Jackson classics, House of Hell and Appointment with Fear, which for me are miles above the rest of the range. I think they're absolutely brilliant. The Ian Livingstone classic, Death Trap Dungeon. Death Trap Dungeon is, for me, the definitive fighting fantasy game book. You know, if someone says fighting fantasy to you, that's what you immediately imagine. It's not necessarily the best book in the series, but it's the one that sort of defines what fighting fantasy is all about. And I think it's really significantly helped by Ian McCaig's incredibly atmospheric artwork. And the two other books I'm going to choose are two surprises. I'd never have picked these two books at the start of this retrospective. One is a sci-fi book, Rebel Planet by Robin Waterfield, which really impressed me. I think it's terrific. And the other one is this guy, Sword of the Samurai. Really very interesting, unusual adventure. I think it pushed the boat out a bit. So they're my top 5. Number 6 to 10, I'm going to pick the other two Steve Jackson classics, Citadel of Chaos and Starship Traveller, another science fiction one, which went up in my estimation this time round. It's actually quite an interesting adventure. Then the other Ian Livingstone classic, City of Thieves. I feel really guilty not putting City of Thieves in my top 5 because I have a huge nostalgia rush for that book and I still love it to pieces. It would probably be my number 6 if I was ranking these 1 to 20. Great fun book, and I wish I could put in my top 5. There's not enough room. And then the other two books I'm going to put in this 5 are the two books by the other Steve Jackson, US Steve Jackson, Scorpion Swamp and Demons of the Deep. I think Steve Jackson is underrated as a game book constructor. I think these are really enjoyable. Scorpion Swamp is a book that tends to divide fighting fantasy fans. I really love it. I really, really enjoy that adventure very much. And Demons of the Deep, looking back at these videos I've done, I think perhaps I was a bit harsh on Demons of the Deep. I might have given the impression that I don't like it, but actually I do. I think it's a very enjoyable game, and I think it belongs in this 5. Books 11 to 15. First of all, I'm going to pick the two old classics, Warlock of Firetop Mountain and Forest of Doom. Now, old school fans like me might be a bit upset that I put these so low. I do love them, and I have a huge nostalgia for them. I really enjoy playing them. I just think that they're from the early part of the range, and as the range grew, it got more sophisticated, it trying to do more different things that are more interesting. If you look back at Warlock of Firetop Mountain, it's really just a dungeon master's dungeon, even in the way it's written, right? And that bloody maze still gets on my nerves. It still ruins the game for me, but I still like it and it belongs here. Forest of Doom used to be one of my top 10 favourites. Playing it again after all these years, huge nostalgia rush. I still love Yaztramo in his treehouse. The problem is, it's too easy, and there's not much going on, really. You know, when you think about all the encounters you get in this book, Sword of the Samurai, there's nothing close to that in Forest of Doom. But I still have a huge nostalgia rush for it. The other 3 books in this 5, I'm going to pick Island of the Lizard King, which is a perfectly decent adventure. For me, the dictionary definition of average in the series. It works perfectly fine for 1 game or 2 games. I just don't find it very memorable for some reason. It doesn't stick in my mind. And then the other 2 books I'm going to pick are the 2 Ian Livingstone books, which I think are very underrated, Freeway Fighter and Temple of Terror. Now, Freeway Fighter, if I was doing this ranking purely based on setting and storyline, it would be in my top 5. I love the Mad Max setting. I really love it. I think it's a great avenue for fighting fantasy to explore. But what I've tried to do in this ranking, I've tried to be fair, the book as a whole, particularly as a game book, right? That's what I'm particularly interested in. How does it work as a game, right? And the gameplay in Freeway Fighter is crap. It's very repetitive and it's not very interesting. So it does let the book down. If it was just story and setting, it would be my top 5. Gameplay-wise, it's not very good. As for Temple of Terror, I really like Temple of Terror, but it does take a long time to get going. All the stuff when you're tramping through the desert is a bit boring. It's only when you get to the city and you meet death, you know, that's when it gets interesting. But I like those 2 adventures and I'd speak up for them. My bottom 5, books 16 to 20. Well, these are the 5 game books that I don't really get on with. I don't really like these ones. I've tried in these reviews to be fair to them and find something interesting in them, but I struggled. I've picked the 3 Andrew Chapman books, Space Assassin, Rings of Kether and Seas of Blood. I don't like these books very much. I think they're the weakest in the range. I don't think Chapman is a great game book writer. Sorry. I've also picked Caverns of the Snow Witch. I never liked this book. First of all, it's way too hard. And secondly, the story didn't grab me. I like the artwork, though I don't think it suits the action, but I do like the artwork. But the story just never grabbed me. I could never get into it. And finally, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, and I'm really sorry, genuinely, it's Talisman of Death. I know that this is a favourite book amongst many of you. I suspect, though, it's a favourite book amongst those of you who followed the series that, what are they called? Mark Smith and Jamie Thompson wrote from that book that's set in Orb. I think it's called Way of the Ninja or Way of the Tiger. So if you're interested in that series, perhaps this book has more resonance. But I'm interested in fighting fantasy, and I love the setup of it when you arrive in Orb, but the actual adventure doesn't deliver for me. I find it a bit bland, a bit like Bob Harvey's artwork. So that's my ranking. Just quickly, best cover. My favourite cover now, actually, is Island of the Lizard King, Ian McCaig. I think that's a fantastic, iconic the kind of cover you want from every fighting fantasy game book. And the best interior artwork, there ain't no choice. It's Ian McCaig's work for Death Trap Dungeon, which is brilliant, surreal, terrifying nightmare fodder. And very close second is City of Thieves, but Death Trap Dungeon, the interior artwork is amazing. So that's my summation of the first 20 books so far. I'd love to hear what your summation is. How would you rank them in groups of 5? And what's your favourite cover and artwork? I'd love to hear from you below. Thanks very much.